It's time for another Dice Tower review with the Chief, Bart Brunsheen.
Hey, it's the Chief from the Dice Tower. Judd Vance from
Hemtag
is joining me again. We're going to be talking about Punic Island, the First Punic War, Rome coming down and attacking Carthage in Sicily, and this being the third volume in the Campaign Commander series. This is actually probably the more complex version of the series. Judd, why don't you give it a little bit more of an introduction? I know it's as high on your list.
Okay. It's, as Bart said, First Punic War. You're not having Hannibal going over the Alps in this one. This is the battle over Sicily. It starts off a little different than the others, where Stalingrad, Germans start rushing over, Russians build up and push back. The second one, Japan spreads out. Yeah, Coral Sea, Japan spreads out, and the Allies will push back, but it's not an overpowering force. This one, Carthage starts with almost the entire island as they did historically. Rome comes in and helps out Messana against the siege, and then starts steamrolling across the island. They're just more powerful. Carthage starts with a big naval advantage. Rome balances it out with the Corvus. And it's really almost like a controlled retreat. Carthage starts with a whole bunch of victory points at the beginning, and at the end, can they still stay on top? They are not going to plaster Rome in this thing.
That's what is interesting in the three different games that are in the series. It's operational combat in the First Punic War. So let's go in. Judd's actually going to explain a little bit more of the mechanics, and then we'll come out and we'll give our overall views.
Okay, this is an overview of the map. You can see different areas on here: Camarina, Syracuse, Messana, Reggio, Lilybaeum, places like this, Heraclea. Each one of these has a value. It's kind of a little hard to see. We'll get on the zoom in. Has a victory point value and a siege defense value on it. And at the start of the game, Rome controls Messana and Reggio, and Messana is under siege by the Syracusans, who are allies with Carthage. Rome's going to come in and knock them off, just like they did historically, then start marching across the island. Once they get Syracuse on their side, they can put it under siege and pull a certain card. It'll flip a whole bunch of these that have coin symbols to their side. They'll get the Syracuse allies on their side. Okay, in this game, these are some of the units. You got naval units here. You got ground units. This is interesting because Carthage had a lot of allies. Like this is North African. I believe this is a Gallic unit, Syracuse unit, Iberian unit. So these are all their allies. These are Roman units. Now something unique to this game is that it uses leaders. Now Stalingrad had a leader that gave them a little boost. This is actually key. You can only move one unit at a time unless you have a leader, because it fit the theme of the era where people followed leaders more than a chain of command. I have a couple of leaders here. Like here's Hamilcar and Xanthippus, sorry. It has a Spanish name on there. But the game's not in Spanish, by the way, just some of the names are. Anyways, you can see +2, and I'll talk about what these are. +2. Over here I got some Roman consuls. +1 for here, -1. Whenever Rome will bring in a consular army, as they did in the time, because these guys were basically senators who took turns leading the army, you have a mixed bag, draw them out of a cup and draw 2. You might get good ones, you might get bad ones. When Carthage brings it in and it calls for leader, they draw. They can only have 2 on the board at a time. They're going to remove one randomly, so it might not necessarily be the guy you want. So that's an interesting aspect. And also because the leaders are the only guys who can move more than one unit, that creates a lot of hardship. You also need leaders to activate sieges. So this is a different aspect from the other 2 games in this series. These guys take on a whole lot of importance. Something this is one of the very unique aspects of the whole Campaign Commander series. If you know how to play the other 2, this is going to be the same. The way you determine how you move on the board and actually how you activate units and play is you don't have a you go, I go, or things like that, or area impulse. You play at the start of a quote turn, a chit. And this is an example. This shows a side with cards. This shows a map. Each player has one. You're going to put it out there, put your hand over it, reveal at the same time. Rome is going to have the initiative. It's very important to determine initiative. The only way Carthage can get it is if they control every city in Sicily. And Rome starts with Messana, so they're going to have the initiative. Okay, now when you go, if each player plays the map side, you can do, a card side. You can do a card action. Okay. And what that means is if you're not at your hand limit, you can draw a card. If you you can also play, you could play a card out of your hand, or you can discard a card to get a supply marker on the board. These are example of some of the cards. These are some Roman cards. Green borders, when you play the card chit, these are what you're usually going to play. They're like events. Like I said, you can discard any of them for a supply marker. This will add supplies to there. It tells you where to put them. 6 of them. You're going to put them in Sicily and 4 at Reggio. This one has a nice search your deck feature. Each of these games have one of those cards. If you're looking for a card you really need, you can do it instead. This brings in Roman reinforcements. Tells you how many of each unit, where to bring them in at. A red card is played during an operation. It's like an interrupt card. This one, bad weather, so you can jack up some Carthaginian ships with this. Carthage has some for Rome, and it's pretty cool from the thematic feel. Blue cards are played in battle or after battle, depending on what it says. It can give you an advantage. Some of them are like after the battle's over, you get to destroy a whole bunch more units, and destroying units are victory points. Now, the map action is the only way that you can move units on the map itself. So if one guy plays map and one guy plays card, it doesn't matter who has initiative. The map will always go first. If you both play cards, you both do your action, the guy with initiative goes first. But this is where it's interesting. Both players play the map. At this point, only one guy's going to go, the other's going to lose his turn per se. You're going to each roll a die and add 2 to the guy with initiative, and he's going to win ties. Whoever wins goes. This means the guy without initiative, who's probably going to be Carthage in this game, gets really sly and wise, figuring out Rome is short on supply markers, they're going to need to do something, this is my chance. Or he's low on cards, I think he's going to need it. Sometimes you just get desperate. I really got to get in and stop this thing, so I'm going to play it and hope I can win the roll. Okay, so I talked about if you play a map action, you get to do something on the board. Now here's how you do it, and here's part of the unique system that this whole system has. Right here, this is they call it a resource point, or I like to call them resource markers. When you play the map and you actually get, if you have a dice off and win or whatever, you spend one of these points. So swap the 3 with the 2. You spend one of those, that will get you 6 supply points. There's a little track on the side from 0 to 6, and you put your marker on the 6. And then you're going to spend points. Anywhere within 3 land areas of this area, a unit is eligible to be activated. For instance, it costs a point, this is a depleted unit, it costs a point to flip him back over. If he has a disorganized marker, I'll give one to Rome. I'll talk about how to get that in a second. Those give you -1 on everything, which you don't necessarily want. It's pretty bad. You can get rid of those for a point. You can move units. I think it's 1 to move a naval stack, and a stack can be as little as 1 or as many as whatever. And you can move ground units. I think it's 3, or you can conduct a siege, which is like 4 points. So you spend your supply points anywhere within the 3. If you're out at sea, you can spend it in that sea zone, or activate any ground unit if they're adjacent. Okay, in the combat system, another part of this system is very, very unique. First thing you're going to do is draw a number of these chits here. Each one of these have different representations. This is like elephant, this is confusion on the battlefield, a flanking attack, and a Roman wedge. You're going to draw them based on the highest value. This is your tactical value. Pick out the unit with the highest tactical value. If your leader has a +1, you're going to add +1 to everybody. So like he has a +1, so the Romans are going to draw 3, they're going to draw 2. So you're going to draw those. The reason you want to draw lots is because some of these chits are bad, like this here. This could miss you over. It's confusion on the battlefield, check yourself. You play one of these chits and do what it says. And you're going to, if it says make a cohesion check, which almost all of them do, you're going to roll against this, a D10. If you roll higher than it, you fail. So like you can tell these Gallic units, they're not real cohesive. Romans are a lot more disciplined. They got higher numbers. They're tougher to beat in combat. This is not an attack factor. It's more how well you stay together in the face of combat. So anyways, you're going to roll against that and see if you fail. If you fail, it could deplete you, which you see him go from 4-6 to 3-6. He's going to become even weaker. You could get a disorganized marker, which gives you -1 on everything, and you immediately have to retreat from the combat. If you enter combat with one of these, you're -1 on everything. So you play those back and forth until somebody loses. It can be a little bit of a dice fest, but not so much in these games because they have such low cohesions. They break pretty easily. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably haven't real familiar with these chits and memorized them like I have. So I created these cards. I got the inspiration from John Boone on BGG. Well, let me throw this one down, like the wedge. It has everything you need on it. You don't have to consult the rule book back and forth. It tells you Carthage is going to check their infantry, add 2 to the die roll. If they fail, they deplete, they flip over. Then a Roman infantry is going to check, no die roll modifier. If they fail, they deplete. Then I have stuff about engagement and then requirements. If you draw this, instead of drawing out of a cup, you can just shuffle the deck and just draw them. If you draw it and you don't meet the prerequisites, you discard it immediately. If you did meet the prerequisite, hold the card, and then when you play it, if you no longer meet it, it's a lose your combat turn. So you got to manage these chits very carefully. It has this tactical nature in this. Okay, now if you are familiar with the combat commander system, this one still has something different. For instance, let me grab some naval units. This is a naval combat setup. 2 Carthaginian ships, 1 Roman ship. You're going to have these combat chits. This is a Carthaginian. This chit here is the ballistas chit. 3 Romans are going to check. Their choice, but if they fail, they're depleted. If they're depleted, they disorganize and leave the battle. It's not this 2-step thing like you saw in the old Avalon Hill games. But this one here, this is where this thing gets really different. This is the Corvus chit. If you're familiar, it's a big plank the Romans carried on their boats, and then it had spikes on it. They'd pull up next to you and just drop it. It hooked to your ship, and then as a moving platform for their infantry to come over and wallop you. So what you do with this is you grab 2 Carthaginian ships of your choice. Usually it's the other guy, the owner picks. You can grab a weakened unit. You stick them out there against 1 Roman and you check. If you fail, you're depleted. If you fail again, you're disorganized, but you don't leave the combat because you're attached to them. The next hit destroys you. So there's a lot, this is a bloodier game than the others. You see a lot more units dying, but it ties up 1 for 2.
All right, we're back. Thanks, Jed. One of the neater things, if I want to call it that, on the Punic Island Wars is there's not a lot of games that are going to be coming in operational level, even on this topic. It's a real nice struggle with the asymmetrical powers. The Carthaginians don't have enough strength to go against Rome. The fact that Rome has their different leaders that are coming from the Roman Senate or whatever, and it's a mixed bag on what you might get is really nice. And the fact that it's simply the Carthaginians have what they have and they just need to hold on and kind of be a thorn in Rome's side as Rome comes in and takes what they want. But you're definitely the expert in this operational level game. So what do you got, Jed?
It's a lot. If you've played the first 2 games in this series, this is a bigger step forward on it. The combat, as you've seen, the way the units engage, the combat system's a little, I mean, it uses the same chip pool, but the combat flow is a lot different. Also, the leaders, the way you activate entire stacks with leaders in this thing versus you got to manage the leaders along with everything else. The nature of the siege warfare in this thing. Also, when I play this game with people, it's frustrated them a bit because when they play it, they go, well, I can't win with Carthage. Let's flip sides, because when I take Carthage, they go, I can't win with Rome. It's not as easy to get a grasp on. You got to really play it a couple of times. See somebody who knows how to play it to see how to play it well. And it's the asymmetrical nature kind of frustrates some users, beginners. So hang with it. I mean, if you want to play me, I'll play on this. I made the Vassal module for it. But it is really interesting because Carthage, it just has to be a brat. You get games like this, Washington's War, the Americans just got to be pesky brats. You know, anytime Rome leads Messana unguarded, I run back here and go for it, or I'll do the same at Reggio, just to cut off their reinforcements, make them come back and get me. They get their navy built up. I throw a Storm at Seas card on them. Rome really has to know how to chain those shipbuilding cards together. So it makes you think through the cards and how you manage them a lot more, and your operations. You just can't run pell-mell all over the place. Rome has to have a plan on how they're going to execute it. Carthage just has to react and annoy them the whole time while they're burning through that deck. So very asymmetrical. A lot harder to get your mind wrapped around than the others because of the rules that you don't see and the combat. If you get playing the other two, you think you have all the answers.
Yeah, the victory conditions of when the card runs out, when the cards run out in the deck, she's over, and if they've held on to their victory points, they're going to win.
Yeah, I don't remember the number exactly. I think they start off like a 39-2 victory point advantage. At the end of the game, hopefully you're still ahead. It's not just taking the cities, killing units. There are certain cards that give you victory conditions, and how you use those. Also then you have the North African incursions by the uprisings that the Romans can cause that'll score them points. But it's really, can you push them, can you get the victory before the game runs out? Because you really can't make a Punic Island game where Carthage is ever going to stand up toe-to-toe and bloody the Romans and go conquer Rome or anything like that.
Chief, Dice Tower, anything else?
Well, you didn't say who the designer was. Francisco Ronco.
He rolls his R's better than I do. Thanks, Francisco. See you guys.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.